Hi, I'm Jennifer Carter, and thank you for joining me on a podcast for parents, teachers, and administrators. Today's conversation should be a good one, and I'm sure it's something on your mind. So let's get to it. Introduce yourself.
Yes, so my name is Keisha Montfleury, and my official title is Confidence Coach for Girls, which means that I host interactive workshops and I provide resources for our school-age girls so that they're able to have a healthy confidence and practice those skills so they're not given into negative behaviors such as self-harm and bullying. And what I tell my parents, because a lot of people think confidence, like my girl is good, I don't have to worry about that. But no, we needing them to be able to practice these skills so they're able to maintain healthy relationships, have healthy standards and healthy boundaries. And for me, I have my degree in child development and human development. So my background, I've been working for over 16 years with families in the community, being, child development, that's my passion. And I just hope I don't overtalk because this is the area where I shine. I love to be able to be a voice to our children and to be able to make sure that our kids are have the opportunity for a healthy social emotional growth, So
Mhm.
yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Well, you know what you said in your description of yourself, or the
Mhm,
description of the work you do,
mhm.
is healthy. And
Yes.
what else you said was so that they don't participate in bullying kind of behavior.
Mhm.
And what I mean, so for example, like, I don't know if you remember, but like maybe 5 years ago or something,
Mhm.
there's a little cartoon character that was really popular. And it said, it was on t-shirts, on bags and stuff. And it said,
Okay.
girls are better than boys, or
Mm.
throw rocks
Mm.
at boys and things
Yeah.
like that. It sounds like you don't have that perspective. You have
Mhm.
a very much a how can we be on par and how can we support
Yes.
and help and coexist. So,
Yes.
so describe a little bit about how you do that then.
Yeah, definitely. So my passion and my purpose is, like I said, with our young girls and being able to support them in that way. But what I do generally is for everybody, I believe, whether you're man, woman, boy, girl. I just believe that all of us want to be able to live out the most healthiest, confident version of ourselves. And I want to make sure that I say, like how you pointed out, I'm glad that you said that, was healthy confidence, because we don't want our children to be sitting here with a false confidence, and that goes with being conceited, that goes with being arrogant. So we want to make sure that we are giving our children the tools needed to be able to do that. So when I have a lot of people that ask, like, so like you said, like, what does that look like, so for me, I host like different workshops and I have programs set for our young girls, which are my elementary school girls, my middle school girls, and then my older girls. But people tend to ask, like, how can you teach a 5-year-old about healthy confidence? And to me, it's just like this is easy to me, but we have to, make sure that our perspective is very different from other people. So having the background that I have, I was a supervisor for a school age program, a before and after school program. And I started to see the way that the kids were acting maybe at school and then after school and then at home. I would get parents like, they don't act like that at home, or how are you able to do this here? And I'm having to talk to her a few times and she doesn't follow directions. But that's why it's very important that we have different people in our lives, like it takes a village to be able to pour into our children. But it starts with things as simple as allowing our children to be able to use their voices. I believe in developing the whole child. So when we're with every program that I do, I am challenging our kids to be able to practice the critical thinking, practice problem solving, practice, that healthy social emotional. And that can be something as simple as asking them about themselves. asking them, what do they like? What are things that they're interested in? And once you're able to speak to them and be able to actively listen to the things that they're interested in, then you get a whole different child. You can even ask a three, when you notice and you're paying attention to like your 3-year-old and how they love the blocks, they love the house area, if they're going to a preschool or whatever the case is. You notice that they're super excited to go and talk to their friends. You notice that they love to help. When you really pick up on those things and start to pay attention to that, then you'll start to see things in a different light, and you can support your children in a different way. So if they like to help with snack at preschool, then you can invite them to be able to help set the table at dinner. You can help them, even a 3-year-old, you can maybe with the veggies, have them peel the lettuce or whatever the case is. But there are just so many different things that we can do to be able to support our kids in this way.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, just like the practical aspects of life, people forget that if you integrate kids into that.
Yes.
And get them while they're young. I mean, once they get to be teenagers, they may not want to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we went through that phase with my kids, but when they're little, up from little all the way to you're pretty good until middle school.
Yeah.
There is just something that is naturally in kids that they want to help. They want to be involved. And I think sometimes parents are maybe reluctant to have their kids help because, let's be honest, the way life is, you're in a hurry.
Yes. I was just about to say, yep. And I was one of those.
How much patience do you have to teach somebody like, oh my God, I'll just do it myself, and so I get it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so do you have any tips or any recommendations for how, like, just the daily context of life, because it is so hurried and we are tired, and we may not have the patience. So how can you bring some of those types of
definitely. I love that. Some of the things that I would say off bat, and I can along with the tips, I'll give like an example.
Okay.
But when I'm talking about being able to just open your mind to be able to listen to your children and to hear them out. And I work a lot, my passion is with our school age, but some of these things can be implemented with the preschoolers also. But one of the things, especially with now going on, before we started recording, we're talking about like distance learning, right? And I'm going to be honest, it's been a little bit of a struggle because we're not used to it. We're used to going to school, picking up, having our routine there. So that's the first thing, is making the proper adjustments that you're needing for your family and the household. And a way to do that is to bring your children, and I'm talking about school age children, so I'm sorry, but you can ask your preschooler too, like, what do they think? What do they think about the schedule? What do they think that can be, what do they need from you to be able to be successful? And it might seem a little bit weird at first if you're not used to having those type of conversations with your children, but you opening up the door to be able to hear what they think, it allows them to be able to learn how to practice using their voice. It lets them know that they matter in the household, they're in the household. So just listening to them, hearing them out. And of course, you're not going to be like, okay, so you can run the schedule and you can, you're not going to do that. Let's use some caution and let's use some wisdom with it. But you do want to hear them out, I have 2 girls in school right now, and one of them is more of a social butterfly. The other one, she's a little bit more reserved. She sits back a little bit more. But I was asking them, like, what do you guys need from me to be able to be successful in in the new routine of things? So they're like, well, Mom, in this area where I'm sitting, everybody pass by a lot and it's distracting. So I'm like, okay, well, thank you so much. I didn't know that. So that's what I'm saying. Just hearing her and hearing what she's needing. And then we were able to make small little adjustments so that she can be able to focus more and be a little bit more, you know, pay attention more for what she needed for herself. So that's one thing, is to make the proper adjustments and to bring your family in on how those adjustments need to look in the household, you
Well, you
know?
know what I'm actually hearing you say
Hmm.
is helping, like building a partnership, especially when you have
Yes.
kids who can articulate
Yes.
what makes them successful
Hmm.
and what is hindering their success. Like
Yes.
the
Yes.
teacher word for it is metacognition, like thinking about how
Mm.
you think or thinking about how you do
Mhm.
things, right?
Yeah.
And how often, if we really think about it, how often do we really ask our kids,
Hmm.
what do you think is causing you
Yeah.
to fill in the blank, whether it's a
Yes.
success or if it's a failure? I know people don't like saying failure, but sometimes you
Hmm.
fail. It is
Yes.
a flat out fail, right? And I'm not going to shy away from using that
Hmm.
word. So what is
Yes.
it that made this successful? What is it that made this a failure? And then
Hmm.
collaborating, because you
Yes.
know we have a center. Oak Tree Learning Center is in San
Hmm.
Bernardino, and I actually have a school in LA now. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
it's Oak Tree.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's also Oak Tree, but it's Oak Tree
Hmm.
View Park, Windsor Hills. And in our school age program in San Bernardino, you'll see that kids are having trouble with work, and they're like, "Well,
Hmm.
I can't get my homework done." And
Hmm.
so I'm like, "Well, what do you need to get your?" I will ask, or our teachers will
Yes.
say, "Why aren't you getting your homework?" And they'll say things like you said,
Hmm.
"We get home really late. We have to run
Mm.
errands. My grandma picks me
Yes.
up late." Like, and these are adult things
Hmm.
that are having an impact on children, but because
Yes.
we don't engage children, we never hear them. And then and then on top of it, we say, "Do better," and they're like, "I'm
Yes.
trying."
Girl, that is what I'm talking about. And that's why I love, like I said, we were talking earlier, like love what you're doing, because you're able to provide a perspective from an educator, from a parent, from, and we need to be able to see those perspectives, because you do demand these things from your kids, but you don't take into, not, I don't want to do a general. I'm just saying most of the time, and I'm speaking to myself too, I have to remind myself that we don't take the children's experience into perspective. So it's just little things like that that, we're allowing them the opportunity to be able to speak up and to be able to use their voice. Now, a cool thing about that is, as you were talking, I was just reminded that when we're asking them questions, we're allowing them to be able to practice the skills necessary to be able to use those critical thinking skills, to be able to use those problem solving skills, and allowing them a safe space to be able to just explain why, because um, if you don't allow them that option, then they get older and then you're wondering why they're not able to make wise decisions,
Right,
why they're, like,
right.
we want them to be able to start practicing these things now. So I remember specifically when I took a parenting class, and one of the ladies, she was the professor, she was saying, stop telling your toddler, stop telling your children no, stop telling them, and at first, you're like, what do you mean stop telling them no? And is what she was saying is that we want to make sure that we're explaining things to them so that they're able to really, like I said, start critically thinking. So an example of that is, like, instead of telling them, stop running or don't do that, explain to them. And it doesn't have to be you sit down and just, like, have a deep conversation, but just tell them, can you please stop running in the house, because I don't want you to get hurt. You can get hurt. Just adding that and letting them know why, then they see it differently, like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, instead of no, stop doing that. This,
Right.
allow them the opportunity to be able to know why, and then, like, give them the opportunity to be able to make those decisions.
Because what
So
you're saying
yeah.
is like giving them a context for why
Yes.
the behavior is
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
You
Because if
know,
you just say no, then that melts into another thing she said, is that your toddler the way they act is going to morph into a teenager. So you're telling your toddler, no, 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 don't do this, hitting them or whatever the case is, when at that point you can start, modeling the behavior and the expectations that you're needing from them. Like, no, please do not, mommy already spoke to you about that. Please do not do that, and then giving them the option, like, what did I tell you, and then as a teenager, you're going to do the same thing. It's just now in a different, different way.
Hey there. If you've gotten this far into the episode, chances are that you really like what you're listening. I'm going to ask you to press pause and share this particular episode with 5 people that you think would really enjoy listening to it. I'm also going to ask that you subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and now let's get back to the conversation. I mean, one of the strategies that I use with my own children and my students, we have the concept of natural consequences, which it sounds pretty innocuous. It sounds like, no big deal, but man, my kids hate when I say natural consequences. You give them a context, hanging out with that kid is the wrong idea because, X, Y, and Z, or I don't know if you should stay up this late because you got to get up early the next day. And then just let them experience that.
Yeah.
And when the natural consequence, you're hanging out with a kid and now you're in trouble. Or it's 7:00 and you don't want to get up for bed. The world is not going to stop. That's when I introduce. I always say, well, these are natural consequences.
I love that.
With students, I would have students who would say, I don't want to do this essay. I don't want to do this work. And I was like, everybody has a choice, but understand this is what happens if you choose this. And this is what happens when you choose that.
Yes.
And it's going to be a natural consequence either way. I won't have to do anything. If you never do your homework, something's going to happen.
And
I don't have to do anything.
Yes.
And like, as it relates to girls, I think, as much as we want to say that society has evolved and there's gender roles are dissolving and be what you want, be who you want to be. I mean, I know a lot of moms and a lot of dads, and there's a lot of the traditional ideas of what it's like to be in a family structure still seem to prevail. And so when you're talking about girls, there's some stuff that they're going to deal with in society. As much as we want to pretend like it's not the case, they're still just So how does your program get them ready for some of that stuff? Like, being talked to. I have male colleagues that try to talk over me and things like that. We saw that during the debates, like I'm speaking, so how do you prepare girls to go out into the world to combat some of those things that, as much as we want them not to exist, we all know they still do?
Well, definitely 3 things that I always tell my girls that I, every time I'm speaking with them, every message that I do, 3 things. One of them is one of the most important relationships you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. Number 2 is this will set you up for healthy relationships with other people. And when I'm talking about healthy relationships, I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about sibling relationships. I'm talking about parent-child relationships. So that will set you up to be able to have standards, have boundaries, and not make excuses for people. And one thing too, because ultimately later on, some of the girls, they're older, they get into they're going to, get into romantic relationships. So you hear a lot of people say, make sure you looking at the red flags. And I'm like, at this point, I don't even call it red flags. I call it red banners, because banners are bigger. People will show you who they are. Yes. We just tend to overlook it. We tend to make excuses for it because we don't have healthy standards and boundaries for ourselves. So then we don't have those expectations for other people in our lives like that. And then
I love that.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Because
And then
if you have a healthy standard for your saying, I like the healthy, not like
yes.
I'm too good for
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah, yeah. Yep.
but I'm too good to be mistreated.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so good. So good. And for I'm sorry, the perspective that you have is the moms, the women, the dads that I'm trying to reach, because they understand that. It's exactly what you said. It's not like you think that you're all that or anything like that, which you are, all that in a bag of chips I am. But there's a healthy way to be able to communicate. There's a healthy way that we want to participate in relationships, and then key number 3 is that all of it takes practice. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. Like you said, there's I'm going to use that a lot now. Natural
Natural
consequences.
consequences.
Yes, natural consequences to the decisions that you make. And every Thursday I get online and do like a little message. But one of the messages that I recently did was there's a difference there's a consequence for every decision that you make. So whenever you're making like a negative decision, I believe that there's consequences for that. And whenever you're making positive decisions, there's benefits. So there's benefits and there's consequences. So that just was like a little eye opener for me that I was able to share with my audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, but as far as like I said, everything takes practice. We have to be very intentional. And you're not going to wake up every day talking about how can I have a healthy confidence today? Like, no, that's not how that works. We got to
No.
be mindful. We're full of emotions, and we just want to make sure that we are using those skills, those critical thinking, the problem solving skills that we're practicing, so that we're able to flourish in the way that we're supposed to. Yes.
But it's hard,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I
It
think
is.
girls are doubly burdened because again, society tells you all these things about equality and you can do
Yes.
anything, and then your
Hmm.
day-to-day life, you're judged because of your appearance, which
Yes.
oftentimes have no control over,
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep.
judged and all kinds of expectations are
Yeah.
scaled back. You're in a high
Yes.
level math class and no one
Hmm.
expects you to be the top student, or you're in a writing class and everybody
Hmm.
expects you to write perfect stories.
Yep.
Like there's all kinds of things
Yes.
that
I'm
girls.
so glad that you're bringing up societal standards of what a woman, should look like, or what a male should look like, because I think it's like false expectations, like what we're saying, and that's why when I'm with my programs, that's something that I tell them, like we're going to have to throw away what we think. What we think confidence looks like, so what we think, that looks like, we're going to throw that out and pour in like what the reality of it is. And the reality of that is like I said, like valuing yourself, having standards for yourself, and then that I'm like a whole different person of what I was, even yesterday. Like we're always evolving, we're always changing. So we have to take what we think we should be, from what society says that we should be, and start practicing certain things and certain skills. Like I said, problem solving and critical thinking. I say that a lot because I just feel like we don't allow our children to be able to do that, because oh, they're kids, they don't know what they're talking about, they don't know, like actually listen to how they feel and what they um another thing too is like respecting our children. And I always say, I know older people be like, what you mean they like respect, they need to respect
They respect me.
yes, what I mean by respecting your children is allowing them the space to be able to speak, allowing them actively listen to them. That's giving them respect, and of course, like we want to use wisdom with that. But yeah, it's let's try something different, and not like, oh my, that's how my mama did it, so that's how.
Yeah.
No, like let's evolve a little bit.
I mean, that you can have your own identity and
Mhm.
still introduce some of these things, because
Yes.
even though it's interesting. I was just telling somebody else on a different episode that I grew up like very, like on the surface, it looked very traditional. Mom and dad, my mom came up from the South. They met, they married, stayed in Cleveland. My parents stayed together. I think if it were a different time, they would have just lived separately and just raised us together, because they were always together. They had a really good partnership.
Yeah.
But they raised us very unconventionally. And so like, I didn't have any expectations. They were like, you're smart. So smart people do well in school.
Yeah.
And so just do as well as you can in school. It
Yeah.
was pretty, and it worked, right? I was like, all right, I'll just do as well as I can. And then when I had my son, it was the same thing with him. Like, just try your best and make sure that when you stand before God, you don't have a whole long list of things to like, let's redact some of this. No, you want to have people to just stand there. But I don't know. I think sometimes we have expectations of what our kids can be.
Yes.
It goes back to that respect and expecting them to be them.
Yeah.
You kind of expect them.
Yeah.
You give them their morals, give them their foundation, but then they freestyle that a little.
Yes, that's so good. I'm glad you said that, because it's exactly right. Give them the foundation of what, like the best that you can do as a parent. And then they're going to ultimately make their own decisions. They're going to grow up. They're going to, we want them to be able to have the opportunity to do that in a way where we have given them the tools. I always say, give our kids the tools, the knowledge, and the strategies to thrive as individuals. I can't make every decision for you. That's why I want to set you up so that you're able to make wise decisions. I can't, I just can't be you. You're going to have to leave the nest at some point, and I don't want to be worried about every little thing that you're doing out there, So yeah, that's a good setting the foundation and just being wise enough to know when it's time to make the proper adjustments, when it's time to let go, or different things like that.
We have a thing where I ask my boys, because I have one son that is biological, and then one of his friends came to live with us when he was 16. And for the one who was 16, it was very different. Like it was this whole different household, all these weird. They're like, he even said it was weird. He was like, it was an adjustment. But like, they would make decisions, and I would, instead of yelling at him, I would say, so was the outcome worth the decision?
That's
and
good.
Surprisingly, sometimes they would be like, yes.
Yeah. Like, it was worth it. Okay.
It's worth it, Mom. I mean, what am I going to do? Be like, well, no, you can't do that. But I think what it did was it taught them that they had some responsibility and agency with how things turned out.
Yes.
So, yes, you may have snuck off campus and got in trouble and got suspended, but if you had one heck of a time doing it, I'm going to be wasting my time convincing you.
Yes. Yeah. But and it goes back to, remember earlier I was saying, telling your child, no, don't do this.
Yes.
Saying that, but then, like, explain to them why that may not be a good idea, and then have them start thinking about them and start working it through their, maybe he did have a good time doing that, and, now it's out of his system. I don't know, so then he's able to, what, I already did that, I'm good, let me just,
Exactly.
Whereas if you're saying, no, don't do this, it's going to spark, any person would be like, wait, why? What like, let me go try this out to see why, So yeah, definitely giving them that opportunity to be able to think. Like, that's my big thing, is like, think, have them, give them the opportunities to be able to do that.
Well, I'm trying to be mindful of time. I never I try not to go over my hour because then I'm like,
no worries, girl. I understand.
But I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out and doing this. This was a good conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah. So that's our conversation for today. I hope you found some information that was interesting or a perspective that you hadn't thought of. If you like what you heard, or even if you have some feedback, put a comment in our comment section. Be sure to like our page and make sure that you subscribe so that you can hear when the next video comes out. Thanks so much again for joining us.